CSIS 2470 is filmed before a live studio audience.
Hey everybody, welcome back to class. Today is our final canvas tag. And this is a new one. The previous three, as you'll recall, are from past Jeff that were taken from my PHP class. This is a brand new one that's adding some extra stuff that wasn't in the PHP class. And that is how to draw images on the canvas. And to demonstrate that, we're going to make a little program that looks like the following. So here's a fun, simple looking program here that is just designed to teach you one thing that's new, which is how to draw that little ship down there. Now that ship is just an image. We didn't draw it with canvas, right? It's just an image, but you're going to learn how to do that. It's literally one line of code to do that, okay? This program is not one line of code. It's a lot more. What I've done is kind of combined a bunch of stuff from all of the previous 3 lectures here all into one to make this fun little thing here. And what it does, every time you refresh the page, that rectangle moves somewhere else. And also new stars are generated. Those little dots are stars, and this ship's in outer space. And so your job is to move the ship into there. And you just do it with the arrow keys, right? Moving them left to right, up and down. And once you cross the barrier, mission accomplished, press escape to start over. If I push the arrow keys now, it doesn't work anymore. But I push escape, it resets everything, puts the home base in a new spot, and I can cruise in there, and there we go. Mission accomplished, press escape, start over. Now it's way at the top, and I'm free. And the moment I get in there, it actually stops and it kills all the keys except for the escape key. That's it. That's what we're going to be building over the next little while here in this lecture. All right, now that you know what it looks like and what it's supposed to do, there ain't nothing to it but to do it to the code. So let's just start off here with the raw HTML. This will probably be the last time we look at it. We got our standard stuff right here in the head, right? We have the title, we got the meta tag, which we don't really care about for this particular project. Got a style sheet linked up here, which has pretty much nothing in it and won't really have much. We have a JavaScript file, which is going to be all of the code that we're going to be doing for this project. Then we have an image, that little spaceship you saw in the demo, and we have the canvas tag. That is all. So we look in here in the script, there's nothing. And in the CSS, we just did our reset on line 1, and then we've given the canvas a background color of black. So let's go take a look at that in the browser here. And this is what we get. Now notice here that the image is not in the canvas. It's an element in the document, and it's above the canvas, right? And so the image is just displaying inline, and then the canvas is right next to it. If I resize our canvas like we normally do, that ship will still not be in the canvas. So let's do that in our JavaScript. Let's get some of the basics going, and then we'll talk about how to take care of that spaceship and get it the way we want it. So as usual, we're going to have a handful of variables here. We're going to have a brush variable, the world variable. We're going to have a ship variable, the home base variable, or home, and stars, which is going to be an array. That's going to be the stars you saw on the screen. And I think that's a good start. And then we're going to call the setup function, and we're going to call the draw function, right? It's the same thing we do every time. And then we'll have the function setup, and we'll have the function draw. And of course, in the function draw, we have the request nation frame draw, right? So that's the standard thing that we do every time, pretty much. And then down here in the setup, since it's the first thing we call, we can pretty much do everything in here for setting up our world right here. So let's get the world, and we'll set it equal to document.query selector canvas, right? We're just selecting the canvas tag. Then we're going to set the brush to equal the world.get text 2D, right? And then we will also position the world, the width, to equal the window.inner width, and the world.height to equal window.inner height. So everything I've done so far should be pretty familiar at this point. You've seen it at least 3 different times in the previous set of lecture videos. So hopefully nothing there was too confusing. So let's just start there. Refresh the page, and you can see the canvas now is taking up the full screen, except there's still that spaceship above it. Now, you'll notice in here I have overflow hidden. Let's turn that off for just a second. Refresh. And you'll see I have a scroll bar situation here, okay? That's because this spaceship is pushing it down and it's causing issues. We don't want that spaceship to be in the HTML section. We want it to be in the canvas. So for the time being, we're going to hide it from the HTML, and then I'll show you later how we're going to add it to the canvas. Let's go ahead and put that overflow back, and let's hide that image. We'll just do display none. And that's all the CSS we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and close it. We don't need it. But now when I refresh, the image is gone and we just have a black background. Okay, let's start off by just drawing the ship. And I'm going to do it a quick and dirty way first, and then we're going to do it the more structured way. But I just want to show you the basics of how it works. Okay, so we need to get the ship out of the DOM, right? So for the moment, we're going to go let image equal document dot query selector image. And since there's only one image, this works just fine, and that'll just grab that image. So now we have a hold of that image, and this right here, this image, which is that entire tag, we're going to tell Canvas to draw that image onto the canvas. So right here in setup, I'll just say brush.draw image. And it takes in 3 properties. It takes in the actual image and then the X and Y coordinates of where we want to position it. So I'm just going to do 100, 100. So let's refresh that. And there it is. It's now drawn on the canvas. Okay, that's really all there is to it. Just this one line of code here. So draw image takes in, again, 3 properties. The image that you're drawing and the position you're going to put it. Now we want to position that ship down to the bottom center. So we're going to have to do a little bit of math. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. But before we do that, remember this thing where we do brush.clear rect 0, 0, and then we do world.width, world.height, right? So that clears out the rectangle. And when I refresh it, now our image is gone, right? And so I can move it down here, refresh, and now it comes back. When we do our animation, we want to keep it down in here, and we don't need to have it in our setup because we start by using the setup function, right? We call this, we set up all this stuff and a bunch more stuff we're going to do in a minute. And then as soon as this all runs, we're going to call the draw function. So let's put this here and let's just go function build the ship. Okay. And we will move this here and we'll say build ship. We take a look here and everything's still working just fine. But now let's see if we can figure out how in the world we're going to get this thing centered at the bottom. Okay. Well, there's lots of things that we know about this ship, or that we're going to know as we build it, or that we're going to need to know as we build it. We need to know its X position because we're going to be moving it around the screen. We need to know its Y position. We need to know its X speed and its Y speed. We might need to know its height and its width. In fact, we will need to know that if we're going to do any kind of collision detection, right? So there's lots of different things. So why don't we make that an object literal, right? It's ship equals curly brackets and a bunch of properties. We can just set that up right here. So ship equals some stuff. We'll start off with the X position and we'll start with undefined for the moment. And we'll do the Y as undefined. And we'll do the height and width. We'll come back to those in a minute. I'll show you where we're going to get those. And then we need the X speed and we'll make it 10, and the Y speed and we'll make it 10. All right. Also, we might as well put in there the actual image, right? The ship's image. And so we can call it image if we want. So we'll say ship image, and we're going to just give it the value of that right there. So I'll just paste that in there. And now if I were to say ship.image right there, that would be the image from our DOM, and we don't need this anymore. And this doesn't have to be called image, right? I could call this, the model of the ship or whatever. And so now down here, I would say ship.model. In fact, if we do that, it should still work right now because this ship thing is global. And so let's just test it. And we'll just put height and width of 0 for just a moment here so we don't have any errors. And refresh, and it still works just the same. But now this is being referred to the model property inside the object literal called ship. Hopefully that all makes sense. So we have this nice little ship here, and it's got enough properties here that we probably should give it a little bit of breathing room here. So let's just go ahead and do that so we can see everything nicely. There we go. So the next thing here, we want to do ship.x, ship.y, right? Well, at the moment, we don't have any values there. So let's put 100 and 100, and we'll go with ship.x and ship.y. And again, nothing should change when I refresh it, and nothing does. And just to prove that it's working, we'll change this to 5 by 5 or something like that. And you can see it puts it over there. Okay, so here's my first question for you. Where do I want the bottom of that ship to be? I want it to be on the bottom of the page. Well, what is the bottom of the page? It's the world height, right? So if I were to just put right here for y, world.height, that's the y position. Right now, this isn't quite right. You'll see as I refresh it, where'd the ship go? Well, you remember when you're dealing with X and Y positions, it starts at the top left corner. So if we go back to our ship, that little editor I had, the X and Y position is right here. So I said that the X and Y position here is the inner height, or sorry, the world height, right? So that means that the world is right above this, and this is below it. So I need to world height minus the height of the ship. So that'll put the bottom of the ship at the bottom of the world. Okay. Well, how big is this thing? Well, we can see here, if I click on there, you can see that it's 90 by 87 if you look down at the bottom there. So it's 90 by 87. So we just know that number now. And so I'm going to just capture that that's 90 and 87. Well, now that we know the height here, we need to subtract it from right here. The problem is I can't just subtract h. This dot h doesn't work, or ship dot h doesn't work. None of those will work. So I either have to decide to just hard code it, which I don't really like doing, or we can change it down here in the build ship function, which is the way I prefer to do it. So we're going to go back to undefined right here. And then after we've created the ship object, I'm going to right away change the X and Y value. We'll start with Y, and we're going to say that ship.y is equal to the world.height minus the ship.height, right? If we look at it now, we refresh, and there it is. It's at the bottom right there. And remember, the height here is 90, right? We got that because we put it here. And how did we know that? Well, we looked in here and we were able to measure it with this tool here, right? Normally when you download an image, you'll have some way of knowing what it is. Either the place you downloaded it from tells you, or if you just hover over an image right here, we go into image, if I hover over it, it tells me right there 90 by 87 as well. So there's lots of different ways to figure it out. But once we know it, that's just information we're going to want to know in our code. And so we just hard coded those values right here because that is the size of the image. We're not using this to manipulate the image size or anything like that. We're just simply saying this is the size of the image. So now we know that this is 90 tall. Well, the inner height, let's say it is 1,000. I don't know. I'm just making up a number here. Well, let's just say the world is 1,000 high. Well, if I were to say put the X and Y position of this ship at 1,000, well, that 1,000 is down here. And remember, X and Y is at the top. It's the top corner right about where my mouse is. So that moves it all down below here. So I'm saying, okay, 1,000 minus 90. So now right here, that's 910. And so it starts at 910 and it goes down 90. If I were to say, you know, something like minus 100, it would scooch it up just a teeny bit off the bottom there. And maybe we want to do that. Maybe we want to put a little buffer there. And so rather than hard coding that, what you'd want to do is somehow do it mathematically, right? So we would take ship.h and we would multiply it by 1.1 or 1.2 or something like that and refresh. And now that moves it off the bottom a little bit, right? So maybe we'll just do it like that. We'll say 0.05 just to get to where it's not completely squished to the bottom, right? So moving to the bottom, that's pretty easy. How do we get it centered though? That's a little bit trickier. Remember, I know I keep saying this, but the X and Y position, when we talk about where do we want to draw the image from, if I said start at 100 by 100, this corner would be 100 by 100 on the screen, right? Earlier, when we drew it at 100 by 100 over here somewhere, what we were saying is put that corner right there, starting on the canvas at 100, down and 100 over, and then it drew it from there like that, okay? Well, what I want to do is center this on the page. So if I can get the width of the page and divide it by 2, we're almost there, right? So let's just check that out. So now I'm going to put undefined for X here. And then down here, we're going to go ahead and define it. Ship.x is equal to world divided by 2. Now, whatever that is, so let's say the world's 2,000. I cut it in half. That's 1,000. And so when we draw the ship down here, ship.x will be 1000. So the x position of the ship will start, that top left corner right there will start at 1000 over on the x-axis on canvas, and it will start at the height of the page minus, whatever that calculates to, about 100 and something, right? So now this isn't quite what we want, but it's really close. If you look closely, it's actually off-center by a hair, and it's off-center by exactly 87 divided by 2, right? Because this image is 87 wide. Well, I don't want this corner to start in the middle of the page. I want this part right here to be in the middle of the page. So if I were to just find the middle of the page and then go backwards half the width of the ship, then that will center the ship. All right, so hopefully that all makes sense mathematically. And we'll just say minus the ship.w divided by 2, right? And if I refresh it now, watch, it'll scooch over to the left just a hair. And now it's dead center. And that's where it's going to start and stay until we start moving with the arrow keys, which we haven't done that yet. But now you can see here, we have this nice setup here, all in our setup function. And we're building all the components of the ship. We're using the object itself, and we're using the height and the width of the page and everything to position it exactly where we want. And then once we've done all of this stuff in the setup, then the draw function gets called, and in the draw function, we build the ship, which is just one simple thing. Draw image, whatever the image is, and the X position and the Y position of where to put it. The end. Okay, next up, let's draw a rectangle. That will be our home base. Okay, now we're going to do a similar thing with the rectangle or the home base that we did with the ship, where we're going to make an object that has all these properties that we can use to design the rectangle. But let's start simple. Let's make a function called build home, or maybe space station, or whatever you want to call it, right? And we know how to do this kind of stuff, right? We're just going to draw a rectangle. So we'll do brush begin path and brush dot close path, and in between there we're going to make the brush stroke style is white, and the brush line width is equal to 10. And then the brush rectangle, and remember, the rectangle takes in a handful of things. It has the starting X and the starting Y. We're just going to do 100, 100 for the moment. And then the width, 300, and the height, 200. And that's all we're going to do for now. And then we have to, of course, say brush.stroke, and that's it. So if I call build home right here, build home should get us a fancy little rectangle in the top left corner. Right? Maybe that's a little too thick. We'll switch that to 5 in a minute. But that's it. We just have a basic rectangle. Okay. Make that 5. Great. There's our rectangle. Let's go ahead and make our home object. And we're going to make it a little bit more advanced later. But let's start just like we did with the ship. So home is going to be equal to an object. And it's going to have an X, which will be 100 for the moment. And the Y will be 100. Whoa. And the width will be 300. And the height will be 200, right? And then we come down here and we'll just change all these to be home.x, home.y, home.width, and home.height. Nothing should change, but we have this nice little structure here that we can use, and it will help us in a minute when we do the randomization of the square. As you'll recall in the demo, that square moves around every time you refresh the page. All right, one last thing that we're going to do here to make the page look the way we want, we're going to put the stars in there, okay? Well, the stars are just arcs. They're just little teeny arcs, okay? So I'm going to actually make a constructor function called star. And we're going to make 100 stars or something like that and display them in random places. We're going to need a begin path and all that, so let's do that first. Brush.begin path, brush.close path. Remember, the arc takes in quite a few parameters. Brush.arc, and we have the X position, the Y position. That's the center point of the arc. Then we have the radius, so we'll say 50. And then we have arc, where it starts to where it goes on a circle in radians. It starts at 0, and it's going to go to math pi times 2. And that'll give us a circle that's up in the left corner of the page that's 50, right? So let's go ahead and do brush dot fill style equals white, and we do brush fill like this. Okay, and then we'll make a show function here, right? This dot show equals function. Forgot we're doing a constructor function here. We'll move all of that into here. Every time we call the star dot show, or whatever we call the star we're going to make, it will display this, right? So let's just start with a basic thing here. We're not going to do anything fancy here. We're going to say stars equals new star, right? And then down here, we're going to say stars dot show. Okay, I refresh. It put that little circle there, and remember, the 0, 0 is right there. That's the center of the circle. Well, we don't want just one. We want 100 of them. Okay. We also don't want them all in the top left corner. So we're going to make an array and fill it with random stars. So first of all, let's make this all happen randomly. So we need an X, a Y, and a radius that are going to be random. These values don't change. So this dot X is something random, and this dot Y is something random, and this dot R is something random. Well, you might recall from our very first lecture on this subject, there was a formula we had for generating random numbers in a range, and it's this formula right here. I've just pasted in. So let's go ahead and grab that, and we're going to put it in all 3 spots right there. Okay, so the question is, what is the range that we want for this dot X and this dot Y? Maybe we don't want them right up against the edge, so we want the maximum place that our X position could be is the width of the screen minus maybe 100 or something like that. So max, we'll put the max in parentheses, and we'll say world width minus 100. So that means that the maximum position that X could be would be whatever the screen width is minus 100. So 100 away from the edge of the right side of the screen. What's the minimum? Well, not 0. Let's do 100, right? And therefore 100 will go there, right? And maybe 100 is too much. We'll find out how it looks in a minute, okay? And then I would say the same kind of thing with Y, right? We would want the max to be the height of the world, so world.height minus 100. So that'll be 100 from the bottom of the screen, and then 100 from the top, 100 from the top, okay? And then the radius. Now this one's going to be a little different. We want a very small range because we want little tiny dots. So I'm going to say the maximum's like 3, and the minimum's like 0.2, 0.2. If we're going to use a decimal here, we don't want to floor it. So we'll get rid of the floor function, and we can get rid of a set of parentheses now. Okay, so now I have a random X that's somewhere between roughly the width of the screen, right? The width minus 100 and 100 from the left. Okay, so between 100 on the left to, let's say the screen's 2000 wide, so it's going from 100 to 1900. Or in the case of the height, let's say the height is 1000. Well, then it's going from 100 down to 900, all right? Hopefully that makes sense. And then the radius is going to be very small, all right? So we have this dot X, this dot Y, and this dot radius. Now, right now, we're only generating one star up here. We're temporarily using that stars variable, which is going to be turned into an array in a minute. But for the moment, we have this stars equaling new star. So when I refresh it, we should get a random tiny dot. So there's one right there. And if I refresh it, it should be a tiny dot somewhere else, a little bit different. You can see each time there are different sizes there. That's a really small one. That's a bigger one. That's a teeny one right there. Okay, and the idea is that the different sizes make it look like a little bit of depth, okay? Right now, this stars, we need to initialize it as an array. So right here, we'll say stars equals an empty array. And then, rather than doing this, we're going to do a loop. We'll say for I equals 0, I is less than 100, I plus plus. And in there, we'll just say stars dot push new star. And so now I've just made an array that has 100 elements in it that are all star objects, right? So when I load the page, we won't see them yet. Actually, I need to get rid of that so we don't get an error. Refresh, we won't see them, but if I came over here to the console and I type stars, you can see there it is. That's 100 star objects. Well, all we have to do now in the draw function is to loop through that stars array and call the show function for each one of them. All right, so we can do a for of loop, for star of stars, star dot show. That's it. So now this will show those stars randomly all over the place. during the draw. And we'll close this and refresh, and there we go. If I refresh it again, you'll see a different star pattern. And you can see some are big, some are small. And because they're so tiny, they kind of have a little shimmer, and they look like they're, you know, when you look at a star in the sky that looks like that sort of cross-looking thing, that's kind of what's going on here. So, and there can be stars inside your rectangle. That's fine. You can see sometimes there are some in there, sometimes there's less. Now you can see that the border, there's clearly a 100 by 100 border all around there, right? Maybe that's too much. Maybe we don't need it to be that big. Maybe it could be 0. Let's just try it. And if we're going to subtract 0 here, we don't need to do anything. All right, and refresh. And yeah, I'm okay with that. They're right up against the edge. That's fine. So there you go. There's our nice little world. If you want to make more stars, feel free. You can change the number to 200 or whatever. But I think 100 works. Now, in this particular case, since the minimum is 0, and remember this formula, max minus min plus min, well, since it's 0, that doesn't change any values here. So we can kill all of this, these extra zeros, because adding and subtracting zeros doesn't do anything, right? And I'll fix the parentheses in a second here. But I want to make sure they're all lined up, right? So now I can delete this extra set at the beginning. Therefore, we don't need the ones at the end here. And then this set that's around the width, we can kill that, right? Don't need that. And we can kill that set around that. And I think that should be everything there. And it shouldn't change anything. If I refresh, you can see we still have the same effect here. Okay, so that's a little bit cleaner. We do need it here for this formula to work to give us a little bit of a range. I think I'm going to go smaller here, like 0.1 and like 2.5 or something like that. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, there we go. That's the world. That's the way it's all going to look. Now we just have to add the functionality, right? All right, let's just do a quick recap of what's happened so far. We've set up some variables. The paintbrush that we're using to paint on our canvas, which we're calling world. We have a ship, which has been set up as an object literal. We have a home, which is also an object literal. Then we have a stars variable, which is an array that's filled with a bunch of stars. We call the setup function and then the draw function. What's the setup function do? Same stuff it always does, right? We grab the canvas using our standard technique. We set the canvas's width, right? This is the canvas here. World.width is the canvas. We set it to the size of the screen, and then we do the same thing with the height. Now, one thing you'll notice we haven't done, which we've done in the past, is this thing here where if I open the console here and I load the page and I close it, it didn't fill that in, right? So we can fix that real quick, but we'll pause on that for just a minute. Besides that, this is the way we've set up every other project, right? So now the brush is equal to the context, the 2D context of our canvas. Here is our home, and this one we could probably get away with shrinking it up, right? We'll just shrink it up here because it's small enough, like so. Okay, the ship I want to keep expanded like that because there's a lot of stuff in there. And so we create this home, and we're going to modify these numbers here in a minute. That'll help us get the rectangle in random spots. But then after we create the ship object, all we've done is we modified immediately the X and Y values down here by basing them on the world size and the ship size. Okay, then we initialize the stars variable as an empty array, and then we filled it right here. Right, and remember this is a for loop, and since it's only one line of code, we don't need curly braces. And that's it. That's the setup function. That's the first thing that happens when the page loads. Then we call the draw function, right? And every time the draw function is called, it clears the world so that we don't get that trailing effect when we start doing motion, which we'll be doing in a minute. Request animation frame, that's what creates the loop. And then we build the ship and we build the home, which is that rectangle, and then we display all the stars. Well, building the ship here just draws the image. Remember, it's taking in the ship model, which is the image from the DOM, and it's taking the ship X and Y position, which we figured out how to get it to the bottom center of the page. The home is just a rectangle based on the home values, which we're going to change in a minute. And then the star constructor function, where we're making random positions for every time a star is born. We make a random position, and we made 100 of them, so we have 100 different random positions. That's what we've done so far. So far, so good?
So far, so good. So what?
Next up, let's get this window to resize like we normally do, right? Okay, so let's just start with that. These two things right here, they're going to happen when we resize the window, but also when we load the page. So we have to kind of call them twice. So to avoid calling them twice, I can either set up an event listener outside of the setup function that calls the setup function, but I don't like that every time the window resizes, we do all of this again. I mean, it's not the end of the world, because when you resize the window, you're kind of starting the game over anyway, because you don't resize a window in the middle of the gameplay. So it's not the end of the world if we do that, but I like keeping the code clean to where all we have is just that at the top. And so what we can do here is inside of here, we'll add these event listeners, and I can just say window.add event listener. Remember, it takes in 2 parameters, so we're going to go with resize, and then we'll call the resize function, right? Well, where's the resize function? It doesn't exist yet, right? So let's make it. So function resize, and we're just going to put these 2 blocks of code in there. Okay, there. Now the problem with this, of course, when we first load the page, it's all teeny, but the moment I resize, it fixes, right? As soon as I resize, it fixes it. But that's not what we're looking for, right? What we want to do is call this resize function immediately, even before we resize the window. So as soon as we call setup, we call the resize function. Of course, we want to make sure that before we do these, we've created the world, because if you look up here, we have world.width, and if we try to call this before world has been assigned, we'll get an error. So we'll just move these down here, and then if we refresh, looks good, right? And if I close that, now notice the stars are not here. This is what I was talking about earlier, that maybe it would be better to just call the setup function when they change the size of the window, right? Because if they did, then it just starts the game over. So that's a decision you have to make. Do you want to have the game start over when they resize, or do you not? I kind of like the idea of having it start over. So that being the case, we're going to modify this. And don't worry if you're trying to code along, because I'm going to give you the code as I always do, right? So I'm going to kind of undo what I just did, but I just want to show you the difference between the two, right? Right now, we're resizing only. We're only changing the size of the canvas when they resize the page. We're not resetting the ship, and see the ship is off center because it was centered on the console, right? If I open the console back up, you can see that it's centered on that, okay? And that's why the stars are all in here, because that is the width of the world at the moment. When I close this, the world width changes, but we didn't redraw anything else, okay? So there's lots of ways to handle this, but let's just take it a simple way here. Rather than calling resize here, let's put these guys back where they were. So I'm just going to undo the code a little bit. Right back here, we'll get rid of the resize function. And rather than calling resize, let's do the thing I don't really want to do, which is move it outside, right? Let's just move it up here, okay? And we'll just call the setup function. So now, if they resize the window, all this stuff happens again. All this stuff right here. So let's see if that solves it. Now, of course, we got to make sure to move the world creation before the height and width, and then refresh. And we'll open up the console, refresh it again. And now I'm going to close the console, and you can see that it resized everything. It redrew all the stars. It redid everything. And this is the behavior I want. So if I change this, I shrink it. Now this is our new playing size, right? And if I grow it, this is our new playing size, and the stars are spread everywhere. And see there's 2 in the box there. If I shrink it down, you'll see that it's been redrawn with different sizes in the box, okay? So now we have all the functionality as far as the layout and the way the page looks. Now let's make the game actually play.